Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys today. In this one we're going to be taking a look at yet another adventure deck. It's actually been a few days now since we've covered one, but I am going to now go into Adventure Virtual World. This is another one of those decks that I mentioned I wanted to cover, and I'm definitely glad that post-Adventure Engine, you know, I was a little bit worried that maybe Virtual World wouldn't be in such a good position, mostly because I didn't really see them making that much of an impact in either the OCG or TCG, you know, at the point in time around when the Adventure and Floowandereeze and all these other cards that we just got in Master Duel were released. One thing that I kind of failed to consider, though, is that we're seeing Master Duel, the meta and overall like ban list is in a much more unique position than either the OCG or TCG were at this point. Mostly with cards that are legal in this format that weren't legal then, or in either format at that time rather. And one of those main cards is going to be, of course, the true king of all calamities, good old VFD, the most very fun dragon in the world. Yeah, so this card here was, if I recall correctly from what I've read / looked up, was not in either legal in either the TCG or OCG at the time adventures were a thing. So as a result, Virtual World did lose a bit of its punch, right? Like, it does still have, you know, like Shen, of course, but Shen by itself is definitely not as good as, you know, as good at closing out games rather as True King of all calamities. So being able to still make this card in this game now on top of the adventure engine is, I think, exactly what Virtual World needed here in Master Duel, right? We saw towards the beginning of this month, the beginning of this season, before the new pack came out, we were playing the Punk engine in Virtual World, and the main reason that we were using the Punk cards was to sort of bait negates out from the opponent, right? Summoning Xiamin, E-telling for Xiamin, trying to go for a Hulk Auroradon play before just going for our main Virtual World plays. They were good plays, don't get me wrong, but again, the main draw of that was to try to bait out the opponent's negates, because Virtual World is one of those decks where it's got powerful combos, but if it gets hit with a negate or, you know, is under like a Maxx or something, it can be pretty hard to recover from that for this deck. So what better way to bait negates than with the adventure engine, where you either bait out the negates and then you get to make your plays, or you know, they don't have a negate and then you just have your own OMNI-NEGATE before you make your Virtual World plays. So that is going to offer quite a bit of consistency in terms of being able to get your combos off to this deck. The Wandering Gryphon Rider and the level 4 adventure token also do offer some little minor options for the extra deck here, mainly the Baron and the Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Xiangying. Now, if you did have Ultimized Zulkin and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, or rather if I did, I guess, then I would take out the Sovereign and probably Utopia Beyond for those two cards here, but you know, they're definitely more fringe extra deck options. But here, since I don't have the Zulkin or Crystal Wing, I think those are fine. So yeah, like I said, the adventure engine just provides not only just, again, that minor synergy in the deck, but most importantly, obviously, the baiting out the responses in the OMNI-NEGATE. Now, Virtual World is still going to pack a punch via the VFD plus Chuche combo, that being an ability that lets you halt all progress from your opponent during their turn, and then even if they have the effect to negate, you can just Chuche in response and then pop the VFD. We're still using all those same combos. We just got the, you know, adventures. This is kind of like Adventure Prank Kids, as opposed to like Adventure Phantom Knights, where again, Adventure Phantom Knights, we're seeing the actual adventure cards, and to an extent Adventure Tendy as well, incorporated into the deck's combos. But with, you know, Adventure Prank Kids and then this deck as well, it's kind of more like you're just playing the OMNI-NEGATE and then doing your combos. Again, there are some minor synergies with this deck that do kind of act as an exemption to that, but they don't really come up that often from what I've seen so far, from what I've been testing. But it could also just be that maybe I'm not going out of my way enough to go into that play. But oh, the other thing I want to talk about the build here is, you notice I'm at 42 cards. So with the adventure engine, I'm a little bit more comfortable going above 40 cards to include it. One, not only because the engine itself is just so good, but two, you know, the engine will also thin itself, most of itself, out of the deck once you use it anyway, right? Like, especially if you have a Foolish, but even if you don't, just the Water Enchantress gets the Rite, gets the, you know, Fateful Adventure, which gets the Dracoback and the Wandering Gryphon Rider. That's like 5 cards out of your deck already when you activate just one. So consistency wise, I don't think it affects the deck too much to go just a little bit over 40. You could go up to like 44, 45, I guess, if you wanted to, but I, as always, like to stick as close to 40 as possible in order to be able to consistently open our hand traps, which we are kind of playing minimal hand traps in this deck. We're just playing the 3 Ash, the 3 C, and the 1 Nibiru. I really wanted to fit in a Hardbeast Feather Duster in this deck as well. I really feel like this is actually a time, this particular point of the meta where people are still trying out a bunch of decks, is a time for, if you were laddering for like Eldritch to really capitalize, and maybe that is the case on ladder, you know, I'm not sure because I'm in Diamond 1, but you know, maybe that is the case on ladder where Eldritch is kind of dominating because really nobody is playing back row. Well, honestly, not that many people were playing back row hate before the new pack came out, and now I feel like even less people are playing back row hate. So if you're on ladder, it might not be a bad time to play a back row heavy, maybe control or stun type deck in order to get the ladder wins there. But yeah, I really wanted to fit in Hardbeast Feather Duster, and I had it in my initial build, but then I realized I wasn't playing Nibiru, and we really do need to play Nibiru for Crossout Designator, so had to take the Hardbeast Feather Duster out. You know, looking at these 42 cards, like literally everything here feels essential. I really don't know how you could cut down on this, honestly, unless you were just going to take out the Crossout Designators, but I think they're way too good not to include here. So you could maybe take out the Foolish Burial, but again, just having another way to get to the Adventure Engine, I don't know. I personally feel all 42 of these cards are needed. Like I said, I really can't imagine cutting even one of them, so this is the build that I think I am satisfied with, and the one that I'm going to be showing in the games we have coming up here. But before we go into those games, let's go ahead and break the list down card by card as always, and then we'll jump straight into those. So we have 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Virtual Hime Nyannyan, 3 Virtual Mai-Hime Lulu, 3 Virtual Xiezhi, Jiji, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 2 Virtual Roshi Laolao, 3 Virtual Kirin Lili, 1 Wandering Gryphon Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Foolish Burial, 3 Virtual City Kauwloon, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 2 Virtual Gate Qinglong, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Emergency Teleport, 2 Called by the Grave, 2 Crossout Designator, 2 Virtual Gate Chuche, and 1 Virtual Gate Shan Wu. That's for the main deck. Down here in the extra deck, we have 1 Stardust Charge Warrior, 1 Coral Dragon, 1 Virtual Beast Xiezhi, I think is how you say this, 1 Cloud Castle, 1 Vermilion Dragon Mech, 1 Ravenous Crocodragon Arceus, 1 Virtual QB Shen, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Qinglong, 1 Constellar Ptolemy M7, 1 number 39 Utopia Beyond, 1 Virtual Phoenix Fanfan, 1 Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, 1 True King of All Calamities, and then finally 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder. Okay, so that is going to do it for the build here. Yep, let's go ahead and now just go into some gameplay. So our first game here is going to be against Dragon Maids, which I think is actually the last deck. Well, there might be a viewer special between that, but that was the last deck profile I recorded anyway. And let's see what we opened with here, or we opened with. Let's see, we got a couple of Ashes. We do have the Kauwloon as well as the Jiji and Laolao, so that is going to be enough to make plays, assuming we don't get Ash, which we do here, but we can actually still make plays even in spite of that because I have Jiji and Laolao here. I can send the Qinglong, send one of the Ashes, and then search a Lulu, and then get plays from there. So, yep, we'll normal the Jiji, like I said, send the Qinglong, special Laolao. Opponent does have Lancia here, though, so that is actually going to stop me in my tracks, as I'm not going to be able to banish the Qinglong. So I'm just going to go ahead and sink into the Shen here, and then just pretty much pass with a Shen and an Ash up, and hope that is enough to stop whatever my opponent's got, which it's not unreasonable for that to be the case. So they discard the Lore Part here and then activate Hospitality. Fortunately, Hospitality can actually be ashed because it does include an effect that sends a card from the deck to the graveyard. So that is going to stop them from getting back the Lore Part here. And what is the Lore Part? Do you want to discard again? I was trying to remember. Oh, and then I can't, I don't know if they were trying to, yeah, that's right. I was trying to figure out if they were trying to negate the banish effect by targeting the Shen with the Lore Part, but if that was the case, that was a bit of a misplay, as it is a continuous and not an activated effect. But In any case, I think they were mainly just trying to bring it back, but regardless, I'll just negate this hospitality here. And then they have to set a card and pass. So even though we were forced to end on only a Shen, as you can see, that's still because our opponent had to use a lot of resources in the form of hand traps. Gonna be totally fine. I'll just battle for 2800 and pass here. I actually did think about potentially using Qinglong right now to go for a Lulu and start making plays. But between the back row and the card in the hand, I was just a little bit uncertain. I could have just discarded Ash. Looking back, this was a bit of a misplay here. I was being, well, I don't know if it was it was a misplay, but it was a misplay due to greed. I really wanted to keep the Ash, and I really wanted to keep the Crossout Designator for plays to combo later, so that's why I didn't Qinglong for Lulu right here, but I do end up doing that a little bit later. I just think I could have ended the game a little bit sooner if I had maybe just done it here. It probably would have been the right play, but opponent does fortunately just dead draw again, so nothing really to worry about here. Now that I've got a spare Ash, I'm more than ready to now use the Qinglong, which again, I could have just done this before, but now we will add the Lulu, send the Ash, and use the Lulu's effect on the Shen here. I'll send the Shanwu and then add a Kauwloon. Now I can activate the Kauwloon to search up a Chuche from the deck, and because I sent the Shanwu, I can now banish that in order to bring back my Jiji. That's going to let me then, start making some plays by sinking. I'm going to go for the Xiezhi here, just get rid of the back row, or whether I wanted to get rid of the back row, but for some reason I mixed this up with like the Shen's conditions. I thought I needed to banish like two different things, but nope, turns out it has to be two of the same thing, but we still have enough damage to go for lethal here. That was the main objective I was going for, and the opponent doesn't have any responses, so we are able to secure the game just like that. So even if the opponent does like stop you with an artifact lance here or something, we can still definitely make enough plays to win the grind game. That's kind of one thing I like about Virtual World, is that it can kind of play, like obviously it's got its combos, but it can kind of play a more grindy game on top of that. So alright, let's go and take a look at the next game here. So this next game is going to be against Sword Soul Tenyi, which I actually haven't seen on ladder, I don't think, until this one right here. And this one honestly didn't get to do too many Sword Soul Tenyi plays. I don't think I even remember seeing that it was a sword. Well, I guess we'll find out in this game. Looks like they're going to take the first turn here. It's too bad. Our opening hand is really, really good for taking the first turn, but fortunately, wow, looks like they must have bricked really hard because all they opened was a DPE. No wonder I didn't know it was Sword Soul Tenyi, but alright, we definitely take those. DPE is definitely still a bit of a threat though, especially with a couple of back rows, so we do have the Ash, of course, right on time. Right on time, Ash. But yeah, I'll go ahead and lead with the Water Enchantress here. And because I already have the Wandering Gryphon Rider in hand, I get to do this a little bit differently, right? Because normally I'd be relying on this Fateful Adventure in order to set up the Wandering Gryphon Rider. But now I'm just going to try to use it as bait for the DPE in order to make sure that the rest of my plays can go off without a hitch here. So I'll activate the Fateful Adventure, like, oh, don't mind me, I just want to add my OMNI-NEGATE, and the opponent's like, no, I'm just going to pop. Now, funnily enough, I kind of feel like the Adventure token is just always the right pop here over the Fateful Adventure. Well, okay, it's really easy for me to say that knowing that I have the Gryphon Rider in hand, but, I mean, because here's the thing, I've already used the Water Enchantress and Rite of Aramesir this turn, so if you pop the token, then I have to add something and then discard something, and then I won't want to add, I don't know, maybe the Fateful Adventure is still right in a vacuum, but and maybe I'm just have the bias of knowing that I already have the Gryphon Rider, but I might have to try that out when I'm disrupting future adventure lines. Like maybe popping the token is just usually the right call, because I feel like it would just always stop it no matter what in this case and in other cases as well, but who knows. In any case, they're going to pop the Fateful Adventure here, which is exactly what I was hoping they'd do. Now I can special this Gryphon Rider, and now I'm not feeling too scared of anything my opponent might have. I'm going to E-Tele for the Nyannyan, and then activate Lili here, sending the Qinglong so that I can set up a Lulu play for later, as well as the Shanwu in order for some graveyard plays later as well. So I'll use Qinglong to add the Lulu, and I'll send the Ash here, because I don't think they have Maxx. I feel like they would have Maxx by now. And now I can special the Lulu. I'm really tempted to just swing here, but I decided to make at least a little bit more plays before just trying to attack for lethal. I'll use the Kauwloon to set up a Chuche here, and then I'm basically going to summon the Stardust Charge Warrior. I am summoning in the extra zone because I need to summon both Lulu and the Nyannyan back. My opponent's got a Veiler for the Stardust Charge Warrior. Totally going to let that resolve. I don't care about not getting this draw at all. Definitely not worth using my Wandering Griffin Rider on. Now I can use Shan Wu to bring back the Lulu. That in turn will bring back the Nyannyan. Opponent does have the Call by the Grave, but I'm just going to use Crossout Designator here. And I'm just going to go ahead and use that to negate. Once again, saving the Wandering Griffin Rider for something that nothing else will be able to negate. Or, you know, in the case of Veiler on Stardust Charge Warrior, that disruption didn't really matter to me at all. It seemed like a pretty obvious bait, I don't know. But here I'm just going to move to Battle Phase. And actually, one of the reasons I moved to Battle Phase wasn't just because I had a ton of damage on board, but I was also thinking that because my opponent was getting prompts to activate an effect, and sorry, I bumped the mic there. Let me actually see their graveyard and see if there's something in there. No, it wasn't. So it must have been either the face down card or the card in hand. So I'm thinking to myself, it could have been Nibiru. So I wanted to at this point go to move to the battle phase for multiple reasons. One, because obviously I had far more than enough damage on board already to lethal. Two, if my opponent did have Nibiru and they wanted to activate it to try to stop me from lethaling them, they would have had to activate it then, and then I could have Wandering Griffin Rider. And then if I really wanted to continue my main phase, I would have had the option to continue my main phase there anyway. But the thing is, if they did have the Nibiru and I had to negate it with the Griffin Rider, I think I would have continued my main phase. At least I'm thinking for Vermilion Dragon Mech, maybe here, sending these two, or no, sorry, sending these two, just again trying to maximize damage here. But Vermilion Dragon Mech, banish, pop the back row, and then I would have swung for game that way. But we do want to be mindful of the back row, because you never know, it could be some variant of Mirror Force. It has happened to me. I have gotten Mirror Force a couple of times here on Master Duel, even by OG Mirror Force, so you do just want to be mindful of that. I mean, you never know who could be playing it, but we're not going to have too much trouble here. We're just going to end up swinging with everything for lethal, with no disruptions or responses from the opponent. Definitely what we like to see there. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look now at the next game. This game is going to be against Adventure Phantom Knight, so always nice to play against another high tier adventure deck. Although I do have to say, I think Adventure Virtual World will still probably land somewhere around tier 2. If I had to guess. I've actually kind of been thinking about making like a more theoretical meta-analysis video for this format, because I feel like it's going to be quite a bit before we get some hard data, and I don't feel like there's really, at this point in time that I'm recording this anyway, which is on the 16th, I don't feel like there's a very like hard and true tier 1 top deck right now. I feel like it's kind of contentious or subjective right now, where a lot of people are kind of debating what is actually the best deck. I think most people think, or rather the majority, not the majority, yeah, most, I said that right. I think most people probably think it's Adventure 10E. I'm inclined to believe that, but it's close, even if it is Adventure 10E and not something else. It's well, I guess even if it is something else too, it's close. So just an interesting meta overall, I think, right now. In any case here, my opponent is doing a little bit more like traditional Phantom Knight plays. They're not going to be setting up a Scythe Lock here, which is definitely really good for me, as Virtual World is one of those decks that just completely crumbles under a Scythe Lock. But I'm trying to remember actually what they do end up setting up. I don't feel like it, I think it was a DPE. Was it a DPE? And I mean, I know there was a Shade Brigandine here as well, or a Rusty Bardish, I mean. But I feel like aside from that, it was only a DPE, which I don't know, just given what my opponent opened. What did my opponent open here? Does it show me? No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, just given what my opponent opened, I definitely feel like they should have been able to do a little bit more here. Maybe not. I was kind of talking over the beginning of that combo line, so I didn't remember exactly what they started with, but yeah, I'm just not really sure, like, you know, making the... Yeah, and this is where they make the verb, right? Yeah, okay. So just, I don't know. I just really feel like there's a lot of better things could have done there. Maybe there wasn't, but again, I wasn't really paying as well attention as I should have at the beginning there. But, oh well, in any case here, that's definitely better news for us in any way. We only have to deal with the DPE. And if you look at our hand, we have a really solid virtual world based hand here. I'm going to start by activating the Kauwloon, and I'm going to get Qinglong instead of Chuche here, because I want to try to force this DPE by trying to negate it. And sure enough, the opponent is going to respond. Now, for some reason, they actually pop their own vert here instead of my Qinglong. Well, I guess to not let me get a search. That actually does make sense. No, yeah, okay, that's definitely fine. I said for some reason, but then I you know, of course I thought about it for 2 more seconds after I spoke, and then I realized, oh, okay. So, that might have looked a little bit weird. You might be like, well, why don't you just start with Lulu here? Why'd you, oops, sorry, I meant to pause that a little while ago. You might be wondering, like, oh, why didn't you start with Lulu? Well, I just wanted to see and make sure that they didn't have, like, an Ashe here, or that this back row wasn't something that was going to mess me up too badly with the Lulu here. So I started with the Jiji. I wanted to send the Nyannyan to grave anyway, and then I figured I've got the Laolao. I can just use that to bring back the Nyannyan, go for the Croco Draco, get a draw in, and do all that stuff before we even have to go for the Lulu and set stuff up with that. Again, mostly just trying to see what kind of responses my opponent has. It doesn't seem like they have a whole lot here. I'm going to send the Lili to the graveyard with the Lulu here, and then add the Chuche, because I might want to set up the Chuche during the end of my turn here. And the Lili I can send to graveyard for the Xiezhi, which I'm making here. That way I can banish that and Jiji and keep both my Nyannyan and Lulu in graveyard, which I'd rather have those two in graveyard. This is going to finally force my opponent's Fogblade, which being Phantom Knights, I was pretty sure this is just what the face down card was. So that was my main goal, was to finally draw out the Fogblade there. Now I can sync for 9 with the Nyannyan and the Xiezhi and go for the Shen at this point. Shen being fairly good against Phantom Knights, you know, because of the ability to banish stuff. I really want to banish this Rusty Bardish, but I did underestimate the fact that my opponent is able to destroy something as a quick effect here, thanks to Fogblade, bringing the Break Sword back into the zone that the Rusty Bardish is in. So that's going to destroy my Shen and put a little bit of holes in my plans for that battle phase anyway. As far as making a VFD here, I'm still going to do that by using the Shan Wu to bring back the Shen, since you can't use Shen's effect the same turn that it goes to the graveyard. Now I can bring out VFD, and I'm obviously going to call Dark here during my opponent's turn, so that way my opponent is not able to utilize any of their Phantom Knights graveyard effects, nor the DPE that's going to come back, nor the Celestial that's in the graveyard. So at this point, I just kind of got a bank on the cards in my opponent's hand not being too great, but unfortunately it looks like they topped the Water Enchantress, so that's going to pose a lot of problems for me, as they're still able to set that up even under the VFD lock, obviously, because nothing about the Adventure engine there is dark. It's like all water and wind, so... But then, of course, we had to call Dark, and then they already have the Dracoback on top of that, so... not only are they able to get the Wandering Gryphon Rider, but they actually bounce my VFD back to the extra deck. Definitely not very good for me here. I do have the Gate and the Nyannyan, or the Lulu rather, but I don't think that's going to be enough here. I'm going to use the Qinglong to try to force out the Phoenix Enforcer. Once again, just wanted to see if they'll pop the Qinglong, and they do this time. So now at the very least I can send this Chuche to the graveyard with Qinglong and then get my search in order to get, I think I end up getting a Jiji here, yeah, just so I can have something I can normal summon and then use the Lulu for. It's actually really too bad that you can only use one Chuche per turn, because I was thinking about this mid-game. Well, I do reach a point here eventually where, you know, I summon the Lulu, and I have the Lulu and the Jiji out, right here. And I was looking through my extra deck, and I was looking through my graveyard for like a solid minute and a half here, just trying to figure out, like, is there any way I can make something to get me out of this scenario? And I was like, I can use both Chuches, make them both level 6s, and then go for the Fan. But unfortunately, yeah, like I said, you can only use even the level adjusting effect of Chuche once per turn. So not able to go for Fan. Would have been nice. I could have banished the, you know, the Rusty Bardish as well as the DPE engrave, but was just not meant to be. I'm only going to be able to use one Chuche, so I'll go for a level 9 Synchro here. I just end up going for Vermilion Dragon Mech, I think, so I can pop both the token and, yeah, so I can pop both the token and the Rusty Bardish here, get them both off the board, but that is unfortunately not going to stop my opponent's DPE from coming back during the standby phase. Oh, and then they get the Dasher effect, and they'll get the Celestial draw on top of this as well. So yeah, definitely had the odds stacked against me a little bit here, even though my opponent seemed like, or rather there seemed like a couple of moments where I was able to overcome what my opponent was putting down. Ultimately, my opponent had just a little bit too much, like just enough too much action going on for me to be able to fully, like, quote-unquote contain it, I guess. And at this point, we're just kind of like, I guess, waiting to see if our opponent's going to end up finishing us off here. They end up going for the access code talker, which is only going to have 4,300 attack points. So I'm thinking, well, at this point, I guess it's not lethal just yet. But then, of course, there's using the water enchantress for the right, and then, of course, I know they can get the token here as well. So that after the access code, or not the token, the Wandering Gryphon Rider, rather. So then the access code is going to be able to pop the Dragon Mech. I'll get back in Ash Blossom just for funsies, but my opponent definitely has far more than 8,000 points worth of damage on the board. So GG's to the Adventure Phantomite deck. It was a close game here, but ultimately we were not able to come out on top just this time here. Oh my god, I can't talk here at the end of this game all of a sudden. Let's just go ahead and move on to the next game. Next duel coming up here is going to be against Maxx, which is I've only come up against Maxx I think like 2 other times besides this, but both other times they made the level 12 synchro, which is pretty scary, so definitely want to prevent that from coming out if at all possible. This is going to be a very adventureful hand, but not a very virtual world based hand, but that's okay. The nice thing about the adventure engine is that even by itself, I mean, it's still a pretty solid end board. With an OMNI-NEGATE, the token's got decent stats, can't be destroyed by battle once per turn because it's equipped, and then you also threaten to bounce a monster next turn as well. So, since I did not have to use the Fateful Adventure effect to get the Wandering Gryphon Rider out, what I'm going to do here is, even though I've already got my whole adventure line set up, I'm still going to use the adventure to add and then banish a Water Enchantress, and then use that to add the Rite of Aramesir before then passing to my opponent. And the reason I want to do this is just to avoid potential dead draws next turn, right? Because it would definitely feel bad if I just top decked my Rite of Aramesir, and then I realized, like, oh, I could have just searched it, and then I could have top decked something else that was actually live, you know? This is also nice because now, even if this board gets answered, these monsters here, I can just Rite of Aramesir next turn, equip the Dracoback once again, and then use the Fateful Adventure to get the Gryphon Rider that I would have presumably used to negate something back out of the deck. So, very nice there. I will note here that I decided to set one, keep one called by. I always go back and forth with this, like whether I should set, you know, if I open like multiple call buys or call buy plus crossout, like do I set both? Do I hold one and set one? I usually end up setting both. This time I just wanted to set one and hold one, but hindsight is 2020. In this game I probably should have set both. We'll see that here in a minute, but I don't know. I always go back and forth on that. I've never been able to really make up my mind on what's right there. So opponent's going to start by specialing and then linking away the Mathmech Edition into a Ling Kuriboh. And then they have the Parallel Exceed. I'm definitely going to try to use my Gryphon Rider here, as Parallel Exceed I know can be used for many different combo applications, and I'm not familiar enough with Mathmech. That's going to be fun to say. I'm not quite familiar enough with this deck just yet in order to know exactly what they're going to go for here, but long story short, I know Parallel Exceed usually ain't good. Sure enough, here though they do have the Droplet, which they're going to use to be able to negate my Wandering Gryphon Rider. So, alas, no negations here. The Parallel Exceed is going to go off without a hitch, but at the very least, my opponent is now still down a couple of other resources here. Alright, from here moving forward, they go into the Primal Mathmech, what is it, Almercian? And I'll definitely use the Ash Blossom to negate the search effect here. I definitely don't want to extend my opponent's plays any further than necessary. And again, also when it's a deck you don't know, like for me, I have no idea what Mathmech really does. So I was just like, that seems scary enough, I'll just stop it. So speaking of things I'm just going to stop because I don't know exactly what my opponent's going to end up doing. I'll just call by this here Diameter. I'm not Diameter. The thing they tried to bring back with Diameter, the Edition. So here is definitely where I wish I would have set the other call by, because we're already seeing something I could have negated, which was this Almercian here, because it tributes his cost. Then I could have flipped the call by, banished it from grave, and negated it. They would have been able to specialist, and they would have just been stuck with the Wicked Kid. But unfortunately, here and now they're able to go for at least a if not like super significant, like decent amount of plays here. Going into the Splash Mage next. Looks like they're going to end up bringing back a monster here. And then I guess they just ended up conceding. I forgot they conceded that early. I thought they went on for a little bit longer after that, but I guess not. But they must have not been able to link climb any further than 3. And then being locked into Cybers, I think at 4 you could still only go into access code, which would still be a good amount of damage. But either that or there was just some restriction specific to that deck that was active that I wasn't just aware of. Because, again, I do have to admit I'm not too well researched on MathMech. But all right, I've got one more game to show off here. Let's go ahead and go straight into it. Okay, so last game here is going to be against a 60 card Witchcrafter deck. So fun stuff. All right, let's see what we've got here. Looks like we're going to be taking the second turn yet again. I'm looking at my opening hand here and I'm like, yeah, this hand is all right. Like, we do have the Kauwloon and the Laolao, so we do have like some amount of plays we can do here. We also have Fateful Adventure to send Qinglong if we really need to as well. So yeah, I think between all this we can have some action. It's just going to depend on what my opponent ends up doing with their first turn here. Now, fortunately, Witchcrafters usually don't do too much that's too scary. This Witchcrafter Hein? Not sure. I think it's Hime. I don't know. But this can be a little bit scary with the ability to destroy our cards as a quick effect. So we are going to have to play around this and make sure that we bait it out before we go for a significant amount of virtual world plays. And here, of course, they're also able to set up their graveyard and in turn their field during the end phase a little bit by sending the By Street. As during the end phase, all the Witchcrafter spells add themselves from the graveyard back to the hand, and then the By Street can even activate itself from the graveyard as well. So we do have the Hein and the one face down card to think about here, but we actually managed to draw the Gryphon Rider. I've been getting pretty lucky doing that actually in these games. I didn't even realize that till just now, but we actually managed to draw it. So I'll just use the Fateful Adventure to add and send the Water Enchantress, and just see if my opponent's going to destroy the Fateful Adventure. They don't, so I activate the Rite of Aramesir here, and then my opponent chooses not to activate their card's effect at this point, so I'm going to chain the Wandering Gryphon Rider. And yep, they still obviously have no way of kind of stopping these from coming down at the same time at this point, so they didn't chain their effect just yet. And spoiler alert, they're not going to be able to chain it at all, because we were able to get the OMNI-NEGATE here out. So I guess that's kind of a fun little way to potentially make the Gryphon and the Adventure token. And again, I forgot they conceded like actually that early. I thought I got to go and do at least a few more plays here. Because what I was going to explain was like, it might seem kind of weird, like, oh, with only the Laolao, how are you going to now make plays? Well, my plan was to use the Kauwloon to set up a Chuche, and then use the Laolao to send a Qinglong to the graveyard, and then use that in order to search for Lulu, and then just go for my plays from there. So again, I thought I don't know, I must have just misremembered. I thought I went to those plays at least a little bit, but I guess they just conceded as soon as they saw Kauwloon, and then I had an OMNI-NEGATE. Plus, like I mentioned in one of my other adventure videos, you know, Adventure is already scary in its own right because the engine by itself puts out 4,000 damage if you're going second. So you don't need much else at all in order to close out the game from there. But all right, that's all I've got for the games now. Let's go ahead and move on to the outro. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for watching, especially all the way to the very end of the video like this. As always, I am super appreciative to all of you who are doing that. It just means a lot to me personally that you actually, you know, want to watch the whole thing. And on top of that, it's just a good way to support the channel. As are commenting and subscribing, I'm also appreciative to those who are doing that. Comments, as always, with this whirlwind of new decks coming out, both to the channel and to, you know, Master Duel as a whole. Those of you who are a bit more well versed in those, I'm always looking for suggestions for the decks and the gameplay, so feel free to chime in with those. I love your guys' constructive criticism. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I honestly have one of the best comment sections I've ever seen on YouTube. I'm not even just saying that either. I'm really not. Like, I very, 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 very rarely actually see like super toxic shit in the comments from you guys. You guys are super positive and just generally very helpful. So I appreciate you very, very much for that. And subscribing, best way to stay notified of when the videos come out. On top of that, you will get those notifications once a day, as I do drop Master Duel videos daily. So you get that from me when you subscribe. Or if you don't either, you could just watch. Either way. But without further ado, I don't have much else to say about the deck at this point. So this is XLex. Signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.